Co. I would like to call today's Public Land Trust Working Group meeting to order. Let the record reflect that it is Monday, August 12, 2024, and the time is 8:04 a.m. We are recording this remote meeting held by interactive conference technology. The members present in today's meeting are Sherry Broder, Don Chang, Ryan Kanaka-Ole, Louis Salveria. I'm sorry, Louis. Salaveria. And myself, Hulu Lindsay. Administrative and technical support are provided by Stacy Ferreira, Everett Ota, Amber Kalua, and Arlene Aguinaldo. First on our agenda is approval of the meeting summary of July 9, 2024. Amber, is anyone signed up to speak on this item?
No, there is not.
Can I get a motion to approve the meeting summary for July 9, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Members, any discussion on any of the items in the meeting summary? If none, roll call, Amber.
Sherry Broder.
Aye.
Don Chang.
Aye.
Briquid Galuteria is excused. Ryan Kanaka-Ole.
Aye.
Hulu Lindsay.
Aye.
Louis Salaveria.
Aye.
We have 5 yes motion passes.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to item 3. Amber, is anyone signed up to speak on this item?
No, there is not.
Members, I'm gonna yield to Sherry for open discussion.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think we should get right to it because I hear that other people besides me need to leave at 9. So I'd like to move right to the draft we got from the state. And I guess I would like to renew my request that I made at the last meeting that we OHA be allowed to meet with the governor to make a presentation on what OHA believes would be fair and reasonable, both with regard to the pro rata share revenue that OHA should be and is entitled to, and also with regard to our view on needing an audit of the PLTIS. So I think that the other members of the committee, would be, and certainly invited to become as well. So I think that that's become a real priority now that I've seen the draft from Ryan, especially. Okay, I finally figured it out, Louis, correct me if I'm wrong, but the state budget for fiscal year 24 is $19 billion. And as we all know, most of the lands, maybe 98% of the lands that the state holds are from the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom and the subsequent taking of those lands by the provisional government and giving them to the United States of America for nothing. So all of those transactions were without any compensation. And Hawaiian people are upset about it. So OHA is only getting 0.1131578947368.4% of the state budget. And it's just not right. It's not fair. Okay, so to take a look at the outline that was submitted by, I guess, the state. Thank you, Ryan, for doing the work. Do you want to put it up on the screen? Can you put it up on the screen, Amber? So he gave us 2. So we need the second one. Okay.
Can you folks see it? This
Yeah.
is.
Yes, thank you,
the-
Amber.
Okay, so let's go to the last page. Let's start with the last page. And no, the next to last page, page 3. That one, standardizing methodology to calculate PLT income and proceeds. I think there's been some misunderstanding between us. I've asked several times because I look to Louis as the knowledgeable, brilliant member of our committee who knows about accounting and accounting methods and how to get the right numbers and figures. But OHA never agreed that we needed more of a definition of revenues or income and proceeds, whichever one you were referring to. And I note that, I'm looking at the first one, excuse me, I'm looking at first one. Okay, and so we never agreed to that. I thought the only thing we agreed to with regard to revenues was that it would be calculated on the gross as it has been every year since 1980. So I thought that was the only thing that we agreed upon, was that that practice should continue. And we definitely are not in favor of any definition by the work to make the definition any different or in any way by the legislature. I note that there's a referral to Act 304. And I think I've tried to say repeatedly that we should go back to Act 304, and it's not fair because what's happened with Act 304 is the state picks and chooses what they want from Act 304 and applies it. And it was a package deal at the time, and it should continue to be a package deal. And so at that time, there was another definition of revenues, but because the whole statute was struck down, that definition was also struck down. So we want, at OHA, we want the entire Act 304, we're tired of the piecemeal use of Act 304 by the state. Okay, so I think that's incorrect. We don't agree with that.
Sherry, can I just add one clarifying point on that particular issue?
Yes.
I think one of the issues when it came to the determination of revenue, and I know this was a discussion that we've had, in our meetings, is how do we treat in-kind revenue? And then the calculation of, what is the market rate for determining in-kind revenue from that perspective? Because it's been a discussion point that we've had. And how do we want that definition, I guess in some ways, it's like the legislature is saying, well, calculate revenue from a gross perspective, but how do you, what are you going to be included in that gross revenue calculation? And so I think that's where some of the clarification needed to happen. But I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
And I guess it's worthy of continued discussion.
Okay, I appreciate your clarification because I think that is what we discussed, things such as, the telescope revenue, going to RCUH instead of being included as an revenue stream for UH. But of course, UH doesn't even account at all. And so I think that's another thing that at OHA we wanted, which is even if in their view, the agency's view, they don't believe that they owe OHA anything, doesn't matter, they're supposed to report. And, the calculation is then made, but everybody is supposed to report. I believe that Act 178 is pretty clear, and there's no carve out. So everybody should be reporting, but they're not. So I think that's a fair point that you're making, Louis, and I really appreciate that. Maybe we could kind of work on what the language might look like to do something like that. So thank you. So I guess there wasn't a misunderstanding. There was just a awkward statement and my reaction to that.
Sherry, let's
Sherry,
hear
can
from
I
Ryan.
I'm
provide
sorry.
a comment too on this point on the standardizing methodology? So, we've been discussing returning to Act 304, and we've actually discussed that at session in previous years at the legislature. And isn't it one of the key components of Act 304, the definition of revenue? So wouldn't we be talking about changing the definition of revenue, or at least clarifying the definition of revenue?
Only if there is support for reenacting Act 304 and at that time agreeing that airport revenues would be paid for on a yearly basis from the general funds. The problem with what's happening right now, not to mention the fact that the evaluation doesn't come out to be fair to OHA. I mean, after the OHA audit in 2016, OHA, concluded that its share was 78 million, not 21.5 million, which it's getting now, but it's got to be a package deal. If that definition of revenue in Act 304 was for the benefit of, that was something the state wanted. And OHA's really tired of having Act 304 used and just pick and choose what the state likes. So, and the reason that I'm so worked up about the airport revenues, because as I showed you in the chart that we brought, that we've done, airport revenues have been paid as past due from either the general funds or from general obligation bonds, or at one time actually from the airport revenue fund. But the problem now is that Judge Healy ruled in 1996 that the state not only owed OHA the money from the airport revenues, but also that the state owed interest on that. But now what happens is when we meet with the state, there is no interest calculation. So when OHA's paid, the money it was paid for the past due this last time, and then when OHA was raised up to 21.5 in 2022, there was no interest calculation on what OHA was owed. It was just a straight one. And what happened was when John Y. paid the $138 million to OHA for past due, that included interest calculation. And that was one of those things, like the reason, we pursued the lawsuit for moratorium on the sale of ceded lands was to create a situation where the state had some incentive to settle with OHA, or settle with the Native Hawaiian people, get a moratorium on the sale of ceded lands. And the interest was the same thing under John Y. The state wanted to settle finally because they didn't want to pay all that interest that was running. But what did the legislature do? It changed the law. So now the law no longer allows interest on past due.
Well, does Judge Healy's ruling override the Supreme Court's ruling that the determination of PLT revenue going to OHA is completely within their discretion as a political question?
The court did find that the revenue, that the Act 304 did require those payments. So the court found that the airport revenues were due, but it did strike down the statute because of Section 16 in the severability clause. But as I'm saying, that was a deal that was done back then. It was a fair and good deal. And there's no reason why that we can't have that deal again. And the state does use parts of that deal today and has all these years. So you know, I appreciate what you're saying, Ryan, but I think that, you know, it's just not fair what's happening. It's not right. And there's a lot of good words said at the legislature and put in statutes, and everybody says a lot of good things, and the court says a lot of good things, but at the end of the day, Native Hawaiian people aren't getting what they deserve and what they're entitled to and what would be fair. So, okay, well, I was surprised that there wasn't even a recommendation in this second version that you did for getting an audit of the PLTIS and of the Reporting Act 178 reporting. So I thought that we had at least all agreed on that. And even though Dawn did kind of give, well, not kind of, even though Dawn, when she found out about her department wanting to get $900,000 to upgrade its system, didn't wholeheartedly continue to embrace the recommendation. But okay, I think that we at OHA, we try to go with the flow and support DLNR in its efforts, because of course we wanted the technology to be better and everything. But now that happened and that money came through. So I was just really kind of surprised that you're no longer recommending that. Okay, you know, one of the things too is DLNR says that it's not supposed to be a reporting system for revenue, but then at the same time, DLNR says that it does report on encumbrances. So, and then it collects the information for that. So to that extent, and that was required by the statute, DLNR is collecting revenue information. So I would think that DLNR would want that those figures to be accurate, since it is its system, and of course the system is better if it is accurate. Another
Sherry,
thing, yeah,
Sherry,
go-
let's hear from Don Chang.
okay.
Chair.
Yeah, thank you. And Sherry, I greatly appreciate your passion, and I know how long you've been working on this and how disappointed you are in when you see our report. So let me just try to respond, at least from my point of view. The first thing, encumbrance. I think when we reference encumbrance, that's usually like, are there any easements or encumbrances on the property? So it's not really revenue related. It's really, are there anything, because that's what we look at PLTIS. But fundamentally, let me address your question about our report and in particular meeting with the governor. I think the state and the three of us, this was not, yes, Ryan did the initial draft, I think but Louis and I both had input into this. So I want this I want to be very clear. This reflects the state's position. I think we went back and we looked at what does Act 226 require the working group to do? And it really is three things. It is to look at account for all ceded lands in the public trust inventory, 2, account for all incomes and proceeds, and 3, subsequently determine the 20%. So based upon our meeting over the last 18 months, we looked at first the account of all ceded lands, and we felt that the PLTIS was the most accurate system that we had. We believe that it is accurate. We've not received any comments, specific comments on any properties that is not included in PLTIS that is ceded lands. We are open to adjusting our PLTIS if that information is brought to our attention. Our upgrades are primarily technical upgrades, but I think the thought of having to pay for another inventory it's taking us, as you can see, we have to keep on upgrading, but it's probably taken us probably 10 years to get this system in response to the legislative enactment that required us to establish the inventory. So while we may differ, and that's fine, to me, that's a recommendation we can make to the legislature. To account for all incomes and proceeds, I think we tried to do that both with our existing, the annual report that DLNR sends to the ledge. It is a self-reporting system. We don't review the accuracy of any of the departments. I know that OHA has disagreed with many of the agency's responses that were not adequate. But I think in our minds, a lot of that went to, one, the definitions. There is a difference in how some of the departments may apply the terms incomes and proceeds. So I thought that we had at least preliminarily agreed that it would be good that we're comparing apples and apples, not apples and oranges. And for me, I think the only entity that can clarify that is the ledge. I think the courts have made it really clear. It's the legislative prerogative what OHA is entitled to. It's not the state, it's not the court, it's the ledge. So to me, this is all within the legislative purview. To answer step 3, which is the subsequently determine the 20%, I think what we can report to the legislature is until 1 and 2 are fully accurate, we can't get to number 3. But once we ensure that we're all on the same page on 1 and 2, 3 should not be difficult to attain, but we're just not there. And I think meeting with the governor, if he wants to meet, I think that's okay. But I think this isn't really going to be up to the governor unless he's talking about a settlement, which we haven't been privy to. But if we're really looking at getting some clear, ensuring that we don't have to keep on doing this every so many years, to me, this is the legislative prerogative. And what we have to do is identify where are the differences between OHA and the state of Hawaii. I think some of the issues that OHA has raised, like Mauna Kea, like DOT, where they place their revenue production parcels. The fact that Mauna Kea, there's no accounting for, they get in kind instead of actual value, they get 20% of viewing time. How do we account for that? To me, that's a very different question. That in my mind is a management question. That is up to every agency, how they manage their public land trust. DLNR, we do provide, under our statute, we can provide gratis for nonprofits because they are doing a public service. So we don't always get the highest and best use. But what I'm hearing OHA's position is when we compare the 19 billion, OHA's not getting their fair share. I'm sure OHA is entitled to something more than what they're getting. But what that is, I don't know. But I think factored within this is some of the issues that OHA is raising as to generating the highest and best use. That's, again, for me, that's a management issue left up to the individual departments under their own existing statutes. But if we can get the legislature to say, okay, agencies, maybe that is your prerogative, how you manage it, but you still have to report it. And if it's in kind, if it's of value, for example, viewing time, if viewing time has a monetary value that you would otherwise have to pay for, maybe you have to include that adjustment in your reporting. I don't know. I mean, but I think that there are other ways that we have to address some of the shortcomings that OHA has identified. But I don't think that it's, I mean, again, for me, when I was looking at this report, I looked at what our mandate was. Our mandate isn't, I mean, it is, like I said, for me, it was those three things. And I think we haven't totally agreed on 1 and 2 yet. And those to me are the recommendations that we make back to the legislature as to how we want to address that. Thank you.
Well, may I say something? I
You're the
don't,
chair, so go ahead.
I agree with you that it has to do with management, but I don't think the management should be inconsistent. I think there should be the same kind of management throughout all the state departments so that there's no question how one department is counting their dollars versus another department. It should be consistent all the way around. So after we straighten this all out, it's so clear. You just grab the numbers and you look at the 20%, that's OHA's. It should be clearer than what it is right now. It's so gray right now that they can make all kinds of excuses why we're not getting our fair share. So I just think that right now it's so unfair. And, you know, we keep struggling in trying to straighten this out, and we keep getting pushback basically from the state.
Chair?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I gotta say, this is my 4th working group on this issue. So the first one was under Governor YAA in the 1990s and ended up eventually being Act 304. The second one was in 1997 when Marjorie Brunster was AG. That one didn't in the end go anywhere. Then the third one was more recently under Governor Ige Working Committee, and that one only had one meeting. So I did feel when I saw all of you in the very beginning that maybe this time something was going to happen. But I'm going to disagree with you, Don. I think that the word all means all. And to me, that means that the inventory is accurate. I'm glad that DLNR thinks that this is a great inventory and they've done a really good, high-class, excellent job in putting it together. But I think that we need professionals to look at it. When we hired the
NNK.
NNK at OHA to do an audit of the revenues, we found that the agencies were underreporting. Well, of course, I mean, it's in their self-interest to keep as much revenue for their agencies as they can. And I understand, of course, that they're trying to do as good a job as they can. But at the same time, Native Hawaiians are entitled to the revenue under this, and it's just not fair that they're getting so little. After that audit, which was in 2016, the OHA then demanded $78 million based on the figures that NNK provided. So all of this talk about, we can't do anything until everything's, exactly in place and this and that. That's just justice delayed is justice denied. And that's all that's been going on all these decades. So I just think that the word all means all. It doesn't mean all to the best of your ability. It means all. And I have, if I had the skills to do the audit of the DLNR inventory, that would be good. But I don't. And that's why I think that we need to have professionals hired who know how to do that. I noticed that in the PLTIS, a lot of the agencies report under trust status, they say, oh, acquired after 1958, as if that's the answer. If funds were used that from the sale of the ceded lands to do that, then it's still trust lands, and that is the law. So I think that all is all. But I do also think at the same time that we do need to have an inventory that we can confidently say includes all. We need to answer, OHA needs to answer to the Hawaiian people. And I hear about this all the time, everywhere we go. You know, that the inventory is not accurate. I did submit today the outline that Professor Jonathan Osorio and Professor Melody McKenzie made of the loss of the lands of the Hawaiian people. And I did submit the outline just for your review. I thought it was very good information and you might like reading it. I noticed that in the report you state that the state abstractor works really hard and reviews all the details, etc., for parcels, but is that for every parcel in the PLTAS, or are you referring to the parcels that DLNR has listed within the PLTAS?
That's a good question, Sherry. I think, I'm not sure, and I don't want to speculate. I would suspect it's for the DLNR parcels.
Yeah.
But I think to move this discussion along, because I, like you, I thought this was a good group, a good working group that could get us closer to. So, I mean, I think you have to appreciate the position that DLNR comes with. I think if we make an admission that this is not an accurate inventory, then, what are we doing? So I think it's okay for the report to say, while DLNR, sort of, as we said in our report, while we believe it is an accurate inventory, I think if the working group wants to seek legislation, appropriations to fund a independent inventory, I think we would support that. I just don't want to be on record saying DLNR admits that the inventory is not accurate, because I think a lot of people rely upon this inventory. So if that is the ultimate recommendation of the working group, that there should be appropriations to fund a third-party expert to prepare the inventory, I don't think the working group, or at least for me, I wouldn't object to that.
Okay.
And
Well,
I support Don's position here, because I think from everyone's standpoint, or at least from what I can see, we're not going to get to some kind of agreement between all the parties at the table here until there is something produced by a third party reviewer, right? I mean, regardless of how much money we pour at DLNR into the PLT, trying to ensure that it is accurate, at the end of the day, you're going to find, or the other, OHA is going to find maybe a one-off or a two-off, or I don't know. But there's not going to be that 100% certainty that you're looking for. But I defer to Louis here, because in my experience reviewing audits, there is a material threshold for what is accurate and what is not accurate. And I don't think that we can get to 100% certainty, but despite that, a third party review, that's where you get that kind of assurance, right?
If I can add to Ryan's point, two different types of audits, right? You have a financial audit, and then you have an audit where you're going to audit a system to determine whether or not the information in the system is accurate or not. And I think we are in agreement that if we can come to some kind of support that to do an audit, or at least that we can make the determination that PLTIS will be the system of record. If we could say with a degree of surety that the PLTIS or some other system at some point in time becomes the system of record, that really goes very far in making the determination, okay, this is the information that we will be pulling from to make the determination where revenue is going to be coming from, and then move forward to the determination of the correct pro rata share. So that's what I would add to that.
okay, I think that I appreciate the conversation we're having, and I will say that I am going to give credit to DLNR. I think it is likely, very likely, that DLNR's reporting, both of its revenue and its land holdings that are in the PLTIS, are the most accurate. And, Don was saying that, or DLNR is saying that the state abstractor reviews its parcels. So the problem that I see that is, to me, is glaringly obvious is that everything relies on self-reporting. And I'm not saying that that's DLNR's fault. That's the way it's all set up. So I don't have that kind of confidence in the other state agencies. Not to say anything bad about anybody or anything. I understand, of course, that state agencies are going to try to keep as much to themselves as they can. And that's just, turf battles the way it is. But I think that DLNR admits that it doesn't check any of the data that is given to it. So that makes a big question mark for both systems. And when we did audit the reporting of the revenue, OHA found a gigantic difference in what was reported and what should have been reported. And then after we saw that, OHA then said that it was owed 78 million a year. Not at that time, it was 12.5 million. You say, we're all saying that the court is saying that it's all a matter of political decision making. And, that may be, but of course, a lot of the statements in the court decisions are the state has the highest fiduciary obligation to Native Hawaiians. And maybe so much time has passed now since that decision or those decisions. I'm not saying the court would do anything different, but I don't think that the state should just completely rely on no developments in that regard.
Don, are you?
Yeah, no, thank you. And I do want to acknowledge that the N&K audit was very helpful. That as a result of that, many of the agencies went back and they re-evaluated how they were declaring. So I think having that independent assessment on the process was helpful. It resulted in a change of behavior. I mean, in my view, I think that's what we want to do. We want to ensure, as Chair Lindsay said, consistency. I don't know we're not going to get necessarily consistency in management because, Chair, all of our different departments have different mission, but how we report revenue should be consistent.
Yes.
That I would agree with you. But I think everybody is, I will only speak for DLNR, but I think based upon the responses that we got, different agencies apply different kinds of, like I said, definitions or their interpretation. So I think if we can agree, and again, I think it's, we want to get some kind of a product to the legislature. I don't think any of us want to start this process all over again. So if we can, in an interim report, recommend that, doing a third party. Yeah, we need appropriations to do some kind of and here we could have in that independent audit. I like that clarification by Louis, independent audit of the system. That would be a much more probably manageable system than trying to create a whole new inventory. But is a PLTIS, is it an accurate system to get us the most accurate inventory? And we can both be sitting at the table in designing the scope of work for that audit or instructions to the auditor. So I think that there is a path forward for the first point in our task. It's the account for all ceded lands, is we can make that recommendation. The second one, account for all incomes and proceeds. I think you guys have raised good points. I think we've seen the value of the NNK audit, that departments did come back. So maybe what we need to do is focus on what are the instructions that, or how are all of the departments ensuring that there's consistent instructions? And to me, Sherry, that is probably within the realm of the governor. I think the governor, through recommendations by this team, can say, hey, there's inconsistencies in how, based upon the letters that the agency sent back, there is inconsistency. We need the governor to go back out and specifically instruct his departments that when they're responding, use these instructions. I mean, to me, that's what the governor can do. We can't do that in the DLNR. Like I said, we just self-report. So maybe that is something that is worthy of, if we can come up with some specific guidelines and get the governor to agree that this is how the income and proceeds should be reported, whether they declare it as income or not, as you say, the statute is clear, all, then they should be reporting all. I think similar to what DOT does, they report all of their revenue. They report, all of their income and proceeds. They just don't declare it as income that they're going to transfer to OHA. So maybe that is something that we can do, is work on some specific recommendations to the governor, instructions that can be sent to all of the divisions, all the different departments. I am just trying to find a path forward for us to report back to the legislature so we can move forward. Because I think, Sherry, and you have the institutional knowledge and the longevity, but I didn't realize you have sat on 4 working groups. So I'd like to see some closure to that, especially, for those of us, here, both Ryan and I at DLNR, we've got a Native Hawaiian leadership at DLNR. We should be able to try to come up with a better path forward. So that's kind of my mana'o on this, but I'm looking for some guidance on how we move forward.
Luis?
Thank you, Chair. And this is great discussion that we're having. And I'll put a proposal out here in terms of thinking that the group can discuss. We talk about auditing the PLTIS system to see if the information is correct. Is it more so what we should be doing is maybe going in and either through an audit or a consultant, making sure that the processes of how information gets into the system is clarified, documented, and very clear, so that we know that the information going into the system is correct. Because, right, if you're self-reporting, essentially whatever is going to go in is going to be whatever you did, but without a clear documentation or process of flow chart, in terms of, okay, this is how you're going to account for it, this is what you're going to do. I guess what I'm trying to think of as a system of record, Chair, and as somebody that went through the whole process of like Sarbanes-Oxley when we were determining, accurate information in financial systems, it really is kind of like flow charting that whole process out from whoever's collecting the information to when it gets recorded. Maybe that's the approach going forward. It's an audit, yes, but it's also more like a recommendation of how to fix the system in order to make sure that information flows into it correctly. I throw that out there for the working group. Maybe that's the clarification piece that we're looking for.
Can I say something, Sherry? I think back in 2016, when the independent auditor found that OHA should be getting 79 million, there was no correspondence between the auditor and the departments. The auditor went into the departments, looked at all the records, came out with their conclusion, and moved on to the next department. As a result, they felt that OHA should have been getting $79 million.
Mhm.
So what is the difference between the auditor and the department heads as to how they figured out they should report on? So I think that still it lies in the consistency of what our income, our resources are built on in each department. Each department cannot be having their own rules. It
Mhm.
has to be consistent across all the state departments. You know, if we're going to do it this way, it's this way. So the difference that came out, the legislature wouldn't even believe the 79 million. They kind of laughed it off. As whenever I had discussions with Ways and Means, with the financial person in the House, they laughed at that 79 million. Well, it's not funny. I can believe that it's real, but they don't want to believe it's real because they don't want the Hawaiians to have that much money in their heads. So they justify not giving us by, oh, we don't have to put this in because, we're doing this and we're doing that. Like the university, we're funding our Hawaiian students. What are they funding our Hawaiian students that they're not funding all the students? I've looked into that too. There's no preference for our Hawaiian kids. So what are they doing for our Hawaiian kids? I've been up to Mauna Kea in all the telescopes. There's no kids up there. Who are they saying in kind to? Where's all that money going? It doesn't make sense. I have actual experience in my head, having been there physically, where there's no money that's going out to the Hawaiian kids. So, and that's why I fight so hard for it, because I know it's not fair and we have to make it fair somehow. We're not getting there in our working group. Apparently, maybe you folks don't believe it too. That kind of money is coming through.
Chair, and I 100%, I support your passion on this particular issue. And for me, I'm a finance person. And so in terms of determining whatever that number is, the number is the number. I mean, it's how we get to that number and the process for determining that number. That's what I would like to do from a clarification perspective. We need to provide you what is fair, just, and what's in the law. And what can we do as a working group to make sure that it survives beyond us, right? We can come to a conclusion, but if that process is not documented, who's to say that the next group that comes in afterwards doesn't say, oh, you know what, this is what they thought, this is what we think. So we almost have to really, really document and clear out how we come to these conclusions to make sure that the information that we're providing is going to stand the test of time.
Sherry, I think we're heading towards 9 o'clock for those that have to depart. You want to say
Sure.
your comments?
I appreciate what you've all said. And, I think that the reason I keep saying audit of the PLTIS is because I do agree with you, Don. That is the most complete system we have. And so I would, before we decide to go do a whole other system, which I doubt we would decide, I would like to see us do what we can to make it better or to make it more complete. And as I said, the problem probably to the most part relies in the self-reporting. And so, I like the way Luce described maybe what we might do. And I think we're kind of on the same page about the accounting as well. So maybe Ryan and I could talk after the meeting and work on a next draft. But would be more together rather than I do one and he does one. So I think the other thing I'd like you to keep in mind, and I don't think we have time to discuss today, is that in 2016, we found that OHA was out 78 million a year. We're only getting 21.5. I would like to see us make some recommendation on it. As I said earlier, justice denied. These kinds of audits we're talking about are going to take a long time. By the time we go through the state process, procurement, find somebody and then have it done, it's going to take a while. So I'd just like you to consider that. I don't expect you to make any comment whatsoever today. I think that's a big ask, and but I would like to have some kind of a consideration of that at the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Any more comments from all of us? Dawn?
Chair, I support Sherry's recommendation that she and Ryan, that may probably be the most efficient path forward is, I trust Ryan. He gets back to us. So, maybe that they continue to work on the draft so that we have one interim report to the legislature that reflects both, the state and OHA's position, but that may be the most efficient process, and I appreciate both of them volunteering. Take this on.
I was asked for you, Don, but I know you got some other things, TMT, Cocoa Palms.
Oh, you have no idea. Perhaps you do. I'm sure you do appreciate.
No, I
it.
don't.
No,
But I know
but,
you're busy.
but Ryan is the
Ryan
right
is
choice.
too.
Yes.
No, Ryan is too.
So, people, when are you available for the next meeting? I'm looking at the last week in August.
Last week in August is okay.
To review yours and Ryan's draft. I don't want to get heavy down in the holiday months. So I figure we kind of try to take care of the heavy business right now to come to some kind of consensus. So
You're talking about the week of the 26th, Chair.
yes, I am.
I am going to be away the week of the 19th, but I'll be back. But that means it's going to be a little bit hard for Ryan and I to keep working. But I can work while I'm on vacation. Anything for PLT.
See, now that's the spirit I appreciate, Sherry. It would be best for me if we tried to move it to the 29th or the 30th. My calendar's kind of beginning to fill up at the beginning of the week. So the
Okay.
29th or the 30th.
I'm okay with either the 29th or the 30th. I will just caveat that with this morning block on the 29th particularly is I have a meeting already.
Okay.
But otherwise
Mhm.
flexible.
Okay, how about the 30th, Ryan?
30th is not good for me, Chair.
Oh, okay.
My apologies, but I can make myself available and juggle around the 29th.
Afternoon or morning?
Any
Afternoon.
time on the
Afternoon.
29th.
Afternoon.
Afternoon
got a
works
tr-
for me.
Yeah.
The
I've got
29th
a
after
drought council
3 is
meeting.
great for me.
Okay, can we do that, Chair? The afternoon of the 30th.
That's
29th.
Thursday.
Oh,
Afternoon
wait.
of the 29th.
Oh, 29th. Okay. Ryan,
Does
is that
that work
okay for
for-
you?
Yeah, after 3 is
That work
great.
for everybody, 29?
Yes.
After 3?
Afternoon.
Or at
Can
3.
we meet,
Yeah.
can we meet at 3, Ryan?
At 3 is fine.
Okay.
Okay,
Why so late?
I have a meeting with Nature Conservancy right before that.
okay.
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 Too
Too late for you, Chair?
kind of.
Or-
I kind of want to
Or we
see.
can do the poll right in the afternoon, like 12 p.m. You know, after 12 p.m., like 12 p.m. or
12 p.m. is good for me. How about you
Okay.
folks?
I can
That's
do that
okay.
too.
I can do that too.
How about you, Ryan? Okay, Sherry?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, let's do it on the 29th at 12 o'clock.
Okay.
12 o'clock, okay. And sorry to put pressure on Ryan and Sherry, but they'll get a draft and distribute it to us before time. And that way we can just go right into the meeting to discuss the draft.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
Thank you so
perfect,
much.
perfect. No, mahalo, everybody.
Mahalo.
The meeting ended up with a much better, Sherry's a little calmer now. I get it, I know, but I appreciate the passion. I truly do, because you
Okay.
have been I look to you for just institutional knowledge, Sherry. You have, yes, no, mahalo for, truly mahalo for that.
For the record, items 4, 5, and 6 will be deferred to a later meeting. Also, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Sherry Broder,
Aye.
Don Chang,
Aye.
Bricker Galataria is excused, Ryan Kanakoole,
Aye.
Hulu Lindsay,
Aye.
Luis Salaveria.
aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Amber.
Mahalo. Thank you,
Thank you,
Chair.
Chair. Thank you, Sherry.
Aloha.
Bye, everyone.